The Outsider podcast shares the opinions and analyses of Drew Landry. They are his thoughts, and his thoughts alone, and do not necessarily reflect every member of his audience or newsletter readers. Now, on with the show.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Outsider Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Drew Landry. And folks, thank you so much for making this the best politics podcast west of I-35 in the Lone Star State. So, however, whenever, and wherever you are listening and or watching, please know I'm incredibly grateful for your attention. In today's episode, I have really three things for you. But I'm really excited to get to my interview with Erika Harrison out of the Houston area to talk about really anything and everything. I mean, she is the host of Black Girls Who Brunch. It's a great website. That's also her social media handle. And it's a great interview. I'm excited about it, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed conducting the interview. But before I get to that, I just want to do two things. And one is newsworthy and another is something personal. But I want to talk about the newsworthy issue first. And that, you can possibly imagine, has to do with none other than Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. And I'm guessing he returned from his Euro trip. His wonderful 4th of July vacation to Iceland and then the UK and wherever else. He came back from that to campaign. And this just reminds me as to how undisciplined of a campaigner that he is. He should have been in Texas talking about the 4th of July, going to 4th of July parades, but he would rather spend time with his mistress and spending money in downtown London and then just totally leaving her off the streets and just so he could try to hustle away from someone who is videoing him. This is ridiculous. But he came back. So, he made it. Good for him. And he did something that was nearly hilarious. And it's funny, but it's almost to the point where you laugh, but you're almost crying about laughing. He's talking to the crowd, and he starts to talk about his faith. And he does that in a way where he's trying to draw differences between himself and Democratic nominee James Tallarico. And he said, well, I want to talk about family. And he goes, really what I want to talk about first is my faith. Dude, you have to have a heart-to-heart talk with Jesus, and you got to make it public. Now, I'm all about religion being a very private thing. I've always felt that way. But I also buy into this. Actions speak about your words. They show how you feel. Okay? If I say that I'm going to mow the yard and I don't, I may have every intention to do so, but I didn't. My actions did not live up to my words. Okay? If I say I support something, say I would say, back in 2018 when I ran, I was a big public education advocate. I still am. But if suddenly I said, you know what? Say I won that race and now I'm like, you know what? I think I want school vouchers. I would not be a very good public education advocate if I did that. All right. Let's just be clear. So if he's going to talk about his faith, you would think that he would have the background to talk about his faith. And his track record on this in the very public eye is sketchy at best. Now, look, I don't know I don't know what his private life is. Maybe he is just completely gone away from Tracy Duhan, who's his mistress, and maybe he has left that home in Denton. I don't know. We'll find out soon enough because, people can't really do a whole lot around here without everyone knowing about it. But it's interesting that from what we know, he has no authority to talk about faith. Zero. Okay? When your wife divorces you based on godly reasons, because that's what she wrote. I mean, you can find the post on X. It's not very difficult to find. But she says, I can no longer go in with this marriage because of godly reasons. That's essentially what she's saying here, meaning she caught him again. So what of your faith are you talking about? There's nothing there. And then he wants to talk about family? Dude, you are the last person to talk about family. The absolute last. And so it's hilarious to me that the Republicans are wanting to just completely just say, you know what? I don't care if you have 3 mistresses or 20. I don't care if you have lied about voter fraud and you yourself are a fraud in voting. I don't care how many times you get divorced. I don't care how many times you do all the wrong things. Because you'll stand with Donald Trump, you got my vote. Because you have an R next to your name, you got my vote. You see, people who buy into that, I mean, I should also not be disingenuous here and say, political science always suggests that party alignment, party allegiance, that's the word that I'm looking for, is irrational. I mean, it's an irrational connection that we have with our team. And we always like to think that we are in the right when we could be objectively in the wrong. And so that's what a lot of people are really feeling here. They love their party. They love their candidate. They don't want to lose elections. This is all about power. They love power more than they love their country. And that's what Republicans have to really wrestle with. Well, yeah, he may be a philandering person. He may have, sketchy values. He may have let off a pedophile. He may have, done that sort of thing. But, at least he's not a Democrat. And you go, what are you talking about? What do you mean? That just goes to show you that the allegiance we have to our party, by and large, is stronger than what we have what we have for our country. And so that's why I'm often beaten up on the Republicans here, because if they truly cared about character, they would have nominated for John Cornyn. They would have nominated him. Yeah, he's old. Yeah, I mean, you're mad at him for one vote. Big deal. They couldn't get over it. And so Paxton, who's an arrogant coward and an undisciplined campaigner, is now wanting people to just kind of forget that he was videoed, forget him being impeached by 61 members of his own party and 60 Democrats. 121 members of the House in 2023 voted to impeach him, including the current House Speaker. And you can go find his post on that. You better find it before he gets wind that I'm telling you to go find it and he deletes it. But you can go find it. And all of it has to do with him being unfit for office. Tallarico joined him in that. Gina Hinojosa joined him in that. All right. Vicky Goodwin joined him in that. So it's wild to me that he was unfit for office in 2023, but in 2026, he's for me. It's wild. But I saw a banner at this at this rally because someone posted it on social media, and it said Paxton that he's standing for our values. What? What values? What values? Since when are the Republicans the values of philanderers? I guess since Trump. Since when are you for crooks? I guess since Trump. And people forget Trump, the president is a 34-time convicted felon. Didn't matter. So I'm just confused as to what you think are the values that Ken Paxton stands for. Because it's not faith. It's not family. It's not good governance. And it's not for justice. So what are they? What are your values? I did an interview years ago. I've been trying to get that interview back. Of course, I haven't tried very hard, but where I did an interview with a local journalist here, well, talk show host, not really a journalist. And, I was, the guy I ran against is the current House Speaker. And he got on to me, he said something about how, that there are Democrats running in this election, and they're not even putting Democrat on their signs. They don't even want to have Democrat on their signs. I just had to laugh at that because his signs had nothing about him being a Republican. And I brought that out to him. I had to laugh, and I said, I made that point to the talk show host, and he goes, well, I've got 3 of his signs, and in my yard. I said, well, good for you, but they don't say they say nothing about being a Republican. He said conservative values, and he goes, well, what do you have? Do you have liberal values? And this is where he really thought he was getting somewhere. And in a calm voice, I just kind of laughed, and I said, no, sir, I have Texas values. And I went on to explain what those would actually be. The interview gets cut short because I don't know why. I haven't talked to the guy since then. It's been 8 years. I have reached out to him once, but he doesn't really want to talk to me. That said, it's interesting that when they talk about these values, what exactly are they? And then you bring up the fact that he's not a good candidate. When no, he's not. He's an imperfect candidate. But who is a perfect one? That they want to throw that card out there. Whatever. You got to roll your eyes on that. So Paxton, the undisciplined, the arrogant, the crooked, and philandering candidate is back in Texas, going around trying to campaign to get people excited for this election. Let's also know that the reason that they're going to have a midterm convention in Dallas in September. This is perfect timing, by the way, like for real. They're doing it because of Paxton. Now they've openly said, no, we're not doing it because of him. Then why are you picking Dallas? Why are you not going to Des Moines, Iowa? There's a Senate race up there. Why are you not going to, Lansing, Michigan? Why are you not going there? There's a Senate race there. So why not go into Minneapolis, Minnesota? There's a governor's and race up there. Why are you not going to these places? Well, why. Why not Raleigh, North Carolina? Because Dallas, Texas is the place where Ken Paxton and the Republicans need the most help. They're looking at the polling. Trump can lie what his approval ratings are anyway, but it's just a laugh. But you can realize that they've kind of given up on North Carolina. Republicans have just said, okay, fine, Roy Cooper's going to have it, but we can't lose Texas. Sure. And no, they can't. But let's just be clear here. I have to agree with what the Cook political report mentioned, maybe like last month or so. Excuse me, that the path to the Senate majority is through Iowa, not Maine, but through Iowa. And I think that if the Democrat there wins in Iowa, and if Sherrod Brown wins in Ohio, those are the telltale signs that Democrats are going to probably gain control of Congress. I think we'll have a divided government anyway. I think Democrats are going to hold on to the House. Well, I'm sorry, they're going to take back the House, but I don't necessarily think it's going to be all that close. Probably where it is now. It might have the Democrats have a net gain of 7 seats, which is, more than what they need. Maybe 8. But it'll be less than because of all the gerrymandering. Let's just be honest here. Okay. So that's why they're having this big thing in Dallas. I mean, they should have it in Columbus, Ohio, but they don't want to, or Cincinnati. That's more of a conservative area, but they don't want to. Fine, you want to come to Dallas to help out old Ken. Got to help out old cockeyed, crooked Ken. Got to help him out. That's what it's all about there. All right. Now, that was the newsworthy thing. I want to talk about something personal here. You may have noticed this, and it's really tough for me to really talk about because it's been part of my life for a long time. I've had a stutter, a stammer, whatever you want to call it, for since I was like 6 years old, maybe 7 years old. I don't remember a time in my life when I didn't have it. So there are times when I have it really under control. And then there's times like the time I just had there where I don't. And so when I'm having trouble pronouncing a word, I'll say a little bit longer, or I'll pause and try to say the word a little bit slower, or I'll think of a synonym for that word. It comes and goes. It's the weirdest thing in the world. It doesn't mean that I'm not confident. It doesn't mean that I'm nervous. It doesn't mean that I'm ill prepared. All it means is that I just can't say that word at that moment. And it has nothing to do with capabilities, has nothing to do with intelligence, because I'm a real smart guy, But that said, it's interesting that I continue to have this sort of issue that I've had for a long, long time, and I've always been very worried. Yeah, that's probably the word I want to use here. A bit more on the concern side, that you may not enjoy this podcast. That speaking is something I really enjoy, but there's times where it's a little bit problematic because I may not be able to get the word out. And it's a giant momentum killer. So with that said, I wanted you to be aware of it, and I wanted you to know that I know. I work on it. I have a script all typed out in case you couldn't figure that out already. That's why I say the same thing every at the beginning of every episode. But it's just part of who I am. There are days when I rarely ever have it. There are days when it just simply won't go away. But the point that I'm trying to make here is I hope that when it happens, it doesn't necessarily, hurt the entertainment value or the knowledge value or the analytical value that I bring. I've never talked about it because I've often felt that it was an obvious thing and I didn't need to really talk about it, but it's been often mistaken for not being confident. It's been mistaken for not knowing, just all the other things you could think of as to why somebody would stutter. That's why that's what people would say that my problem is. It's not that at all. It's something that I have had my entire life. I've learned to live with it. And so is my wife, so is my family, and so do my students. But I just wanted you to know that I know that it's out there, and there are times in my interview with Erika Harrison, that you're about to see, it does show up. So please know that um, I do my best to work around it, but there's times when I just can't avoid it. All right. Thank you for understanding. And without further ado, here's my interview with Erika Harrison. As promised, I've been excited for this for some time. So excited to have Erika Harrison on the Outsider podcast. Erika, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm legit, like honestly excited to have you on here, and it's a real honor. So I'm very very excited about that. You have the website and this group called Black Girls Who Brunch. I'm so interested in this. Talk to me. Like, when did this start? What got you started in this? Just walk us through that.
So I find the name throws people off when they encounter me in the political space. But I started my blog 11 years ago now, which sounds crazy to me. And it started as a food blog. So I was just highlighting restaurants in the Houston area, places I loved. And then I would add in some recipes every so often, especially during COVID. I was doing a lot of recipes during COVID. And I always added a little bit. I always added some oomph to it, so there would always be a little, food is political. So I would always have some extra layers to it. So it wasn't just like Erica's only going to talk about the restaurant. I would also talk about the restaurant when they had a legal issue or what have you. So people kind of were ready for me to have deeper kind of things. And over time, I would always kind of sprinkle in some politics, especially around election season and presidential years. And I would give people kind of like, like little quizzes or kind of help them with some basic civics things that people didn't always understand. And so over time, people will always kind of be looking for that kind of stuff. And after the last election, 2024 presidential election, I really haven't been able to turn back towards just doing food content because of just the need for people to find information that they trust. Also, my legal background also really does help me kind of dissect some of these things in ways that I find that everyone's not always able to do, which is fine. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So part of why I keep the name Black Girls Who Brunch, even though I'm talking about political things, is that when I go to brunch with my friends, who are also oftentimes other Black women lawyers, professionals, we inevitably are going to talk about politics. So what I see my page is what a Black woman who brunches talks about, what's important to her, what is she going to talk about at brunch? And it can be politics, reality TV, the best new restaurants. It can be, buying a house. All of these things are things that me and my friends talk about when we're out to eat. So that's kind of how I see this page. It's just it's me, the Black girl who likes to brunch, and the things that she likes.
That is awesome. I love that. You've been doing it for 11 years. Oh my gosh. I was just really impressed that I've had this whole page up and been consistently writing for 3 years. That pales into comparison to what you've been doing. I love that.
3 is a long time. I find a lot of podcasts kind of make it that first run. They kind of make it just like 6 months. So 3 years is a good run. People keep asking me to do a podcast, and I'm like, because it's a lot of work. It's probably one of the more difficult platforms to be able to operate in the current new media space for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm always jealous of some people who can pay to have someone do all the editing for them. I shake my fist at them. I'm like, I. So, I want to talk about how, like your interest in politics. Have you always had an interest in politics, and like when did that start? Was there some teacher in middle school, or a family member, or just talk about that if you don't mind.
I have always been interested in politics. And the pivotal moment I think about, one of my friends always asks people, when was the first time that you voted? What's your voting story? And I told her that the first time I voted was in first grade. There was an election that year, the presidential election this was when Bill Clinton was running against George Bush the first, when he was running against Herbert Walker Bush. And I was in class, and my parents are avid news watchers, even back then as a kid. So I'm in first grade, and I'd see my parents watch the news. I had seen things about Bill Clinton that didn't sound positive because, like, as a kid, you may not understand, but you pick up on the connotation. There's bad things about this guy, and he's young and all that. I'm like, I'm gonna pick that older guy. So in our little sample presidential election at school, I picked George Herbert Walker Bush to be the president. And I come home to my mother, who has been a strong Democrat as long as she could vote. And I told her, yeah, I went to school today. I voted for Bush. And she was floored. She was like, what? And I don't know why I told her that, because it was a very small little activity. And so I told her that, and she was like, oh, no, 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 we're Democrats. And she explained to me why we're Democrats. And, she's like, this is what he stands for. He does all these different things. And I just couldn't believe, because I'd seen all these negative things about this man on TV. And so then she started making me sit down and watch the DNC. And she's like, okay, Erika's listening, but I got to help direct her to understand like what's happening. And so that was a pivotal thing for me. And ever since then, I always would watch the DNC with my mom. I remember watching the DNC when a guy with a funny name from Illinois was running for senator, Barack Obama. And I remember the anchor, I think it was Peter Jennings, saying, that man could be president one day. So I've always been interested in it. And then got to college, knew I was going to law school, studied history. I was one class short of a poli-sci minor, so I did take a lot of poli-sci courses, but I got senioritis and was like, I'm not doing another poli-sci course. So I did do that. And so I've always been interested in it. And of course, as lawyers, the political space definitely fits into the legal space as well. I also kind of I love like reality TV, and politics is just like it's a convergence of so many things I like. It's gossipy, it's messy, and so it can be entertaining when it's not like things that really impact our rights or what have you. And so that's part of why I like it and have always been engaged. And once I turned 18, and a couple months before George Bush was running for a second election, and proudly went and voted for John Kerry, who lost. And so I've been voting ever since. And as I've gotten older, I've become a more avid, primary, small election kind of voter. But yeah, first grade, that's really what probably made the difference for me.
I love that. I'm sure when you answer that, they just first grade. Like, what do you
First grade.
every time. I remember that. I was in the fourth grade. Gosh, I can't. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it was. And I just remember all these Saturday Night Live skits and Ross Perot. And so I come home just like you. I said, hey, we had this thing, and I voted for Ross Perot. My mom just was, what? And that crazy kook, that old man. Why did you do that? I said, I don't know. So yeah, what a concept.
They used to have Ross Perot skits on. Remember the show? I want to say it was on All That. There was Ross Perot skits on a kid show as well. So
Yes.
we were exposed to him in a way that I think that probably we're not exposed to politicians that kind of fun way anymore. But yeah, I remember there being kid skits with Ross Perot.
Exactly. I do too. There aren't many that I say that, but there are probably people who can find them. High-pitched Southern accents. Hey, hey. I'm like, that sounds that's so wild to me.
It was prime for a comedian. They loved
Yeah.
the character of it all, for sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So you go into law. What did the whole political scene and your history of that want to propel you to go to law school or?
No, I never thought of myself as using my law degree from a political standpoint. Never did I ever think of that. I always knew that most presidents are lawyers, that Bill Clinton was a lawyer, Obama was a lawyer, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden. Like, I knew these were all lawyers, but I never thought about it from going into politics. And even now, I don't see myself as going in. I feel like I just talk about politics, right? I don't feel like I'm in it. You know what I mean? So no, I went to law school. And my thought process was, I don't even know I was in law school during like the worst legal market. So it was really hard to like decide what you wanted to do. It was like, no, you gotta go with what comes to you. And so I wanted to do like civil rights law, which is what I ended up doing. So I got into like employment law and stuff like that. And employment law is very separate from political spaces at all, and working in Title IX at universities and stuff like that. Like, it's discrimination cases and stuff that is not political. but
Mhm.
I loved it and I still do. So that was kind of how I got in that space too.
All right. So you so you handle just kind of echoing what you said here. You handle a lot of Title IX cases. Do you mind to explain what all that would really
Sure.
entail?
So the bulk of my career, I worked in higher my real. So keep in mind, so I've got this blog, and I'm working a full time job, and I have my goal was never to be a full time blogger, although I am doing it full time currently, and because this market is bad. But that was never my goal. So I worked in for universities for many years, where I was an investigator, and I would investigate Title IX cases and also Title VII. So Title IX cases are sexual misconduct cases. This area boomed under the Obama administration, which was right when I got in it, and it ebbs and flows based off of who's in the White House, which is crazy because this kind of work shouldn't be like that.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I would investigate sexual misconduct cases at college campuses. So you name it, from stalking, domestic violence to entrapment, where it's like inappropriate pictures online,
Oh yeah.
sexual harassment, all those kind of
Mhm.
cases. I would investigate those, and then we also were the EEO office, so we'd investigate discrimination cases and disparate impact and all that. So I did that at several campuses in the Houston area for many years, and then moved into corporate America and working in DEI. And DEI, and people don't see them as the same.
Yeah.
EEO and Title IX and the civil rights kind of thing, like that's the stick, like that's like the law you have to follow. And then DEI, people don't understand, it's a bad word now in so many
Oh yeah.
ways, but DEI is the carrot. It is trying to build a culture that is inclusive, that could prohibit some discrimination or sexual misconduct kind of cases. That's kind of the space I've always been in, which is very different than political. Now, the space is very much influenced by politics, but it's very different than politics.
Okay. And you hit the nail on the head, and I think that deserves a little bit of time here because you said DEI is now a bad this bad word, and this is what angers me about those on the left. Well, I shouldn't say anger; it frustrates because we just kind of let the right just own the argument. And it's like, okay, well, I guess that's not good. And instead of trying to educate and explain what this is about and how it's actually a good thing, we just kind of, a lot of those who just, who were involved in the whole conversation just threw up their hands and said, okay, fine. Uh, am I off base on that?
You are absolutely correct. There are several things about that frustrates me. So, for example, I feel like one, we have let them change the meaning of this word, and then I find that liberals and people on the left are adopting the meaning of this word. So, one thing that's really important to understand about DEI, people say we got to bring back merit-based hiring and merit-based things, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and also belonging and things like that, and justice. These principles are merit-based. These principles help everybody. These principles require your company to have competitive hiring practices, to ask the same question to everybody. It accounts for affinity bias, where people can't just go hire their friend that looks like them or went to the same college as them. It accounts for all those different things. And so now we've let the right change what DEI means, that it means that somebody who's not qualified. And then we start using this word how they use it in an unironic way. And I hate it. So a good
Mhm.
example of this in the media right now, Lindsey Graham's sister has been appointed. She's got like the widow's preference, basically. She's been appointed to be the interim to serve in this seat until they have the election in November, and they can swear somebody in January. And so people are like, oh, this is a DEI hire, liberals. And I'm like, I get what you're trying to say here, but in doing so, we are adopting the language they are using. We should just call her what she is unqualified, because
Mhm.
effectively then when we start using the term in the way they do, we've legitimized this labeling of DEI, and whatever iteration that comes back around under a new administration has to get a whole new name because of
Mhm.
how we let them change the meaning of this word. Similarly to woke, that one really bothers me
Oh.
because that word has such meaning in the Black community and Black
Mhm.
history, and to have them just take that word and try to change the meaning drives me crazy. I hate it
Mhm.
so much.
I yes, I and no, I just I don't know if this is playing into their own card game, but when I see this whole book banning stuff and this whole trying to put the Bible and infuse it with public ed and the 10 commandments, I'm like, that's right wing wokeism. Like that's
Mhm.
I don't know if that's falling into their game by using that same alignment, but I'm just like, you're being woke here, which is problematic for me because that word is actually a very good thing, and so it drives me nuts that I use it in that context. But yeah, okay,
It's
but
very frustrating. It's very frustrating. But again, but you're right. We didn't fight that. We fought them a bit on critical race theory. They
yeah,
didn't know what critical they used when they were talking about critical race theory. They actually meant DEI, and I kept laughing. I was like, no one's teaching critical race theory to kids, but okay, because
yeah,
you don't know what that means. And they went back to the drawing board and they figured out the actual real word and they started using DEI. So he knows we don't hear them mention critical race theory anymore. They only mention DEI for a
yeah.
reason.
I don't know many first graders who are learning about the legalese of CRT.
Yes, exactly.
So I love that. I want to just kind of ask about like what are some of your whole like election goals, like your political goals for this midterm cycle? How act like would you consider yourself being like active in this cycle, or do you want to be more active? Like what how do you view yourself in this midterm cycle?
I don't think anyone has asked me that question, Drew, and I love that question. Thank you so much because I do have goals.
Nice.
One of my big goals is to grow my Sway voting group, and I don't know if you're familiar with Sway. Sway is an app. It's a voting app. I would encourage you to make a Sway. If anybody ever asks you, "Can you tell me who I should vote for? Can you help me with my ballot?" Then you probably need a Sway group. And so Sway, I on there I make recommendations for people, and then I send so then when they go look at their ballot, they can filter what I recommended for their specific ballot. But what's powerful about Sway in the interim is that right now I can go send somebody a message. For example, I interviewed Leticia Gutierrez today, who is the Democratic candidate for the new Texas Ninth. She will represent the east end of Houston, which is where the ICE murder happened last week. Once you have the redistricting, that'll be her area, right? And so I got to send people that were in my group a message and saying, hey, I'm interviewing the candidate that's going to be on your ballot. So if you want to hear about her, please check out this interview, which was powerful. So then like I could zone in on people that are in that district. And my audience is big and it's vast. And so to be able to tell somebody, no, this is your district, this is your candidate is really helpful. And with redistricting, people don't know what district they're in. Like they don't know.
Yeah.
So one of my goals is to grow that group because it really does help with from an influence standpoint. Not that I want to influence how people vote in that way, but it's more so influence them to be informed all the way down their ballot, especially when it comes to judge races. And so I think this is one of the tools I'm hoping to use to help to fight against the undervote, which is the big thing in Harris County. We'll have over 100 things on our ballot in Harris County. So people are like, I'm not voting for all that. But if you know someone has vetted all these different judges for you, you feel more confident in those choices, or it gives you somewhere to start to go to your own research, to go to your own digging and research. So that's one of my goals. My other goal too, and this was something that was put on us. I went to Montgomery a few months ago for the March for Voting Rights. I'm so glad I got to go. We drove through Louisiana and Mississippi to get there. My first time in Alabama. I'm so glad I got to go. While we were there, we were at dinner at the Equal Justice Initiative, which is this amazing building created by attorney Brian Stevenson. Sherilyn Ifill, the civil rights attorney, walks in. And I'm like, hey, because I was excited to see her. And so stop and talk to her. And she kind of pours into us. And she says, Texas is really, I just feel like Texas would have been a different place at this point in time, given just the demographic change there. You all have the largest population of black people in this country. And she kind of goes on and on. So she asks us, what's going on? What's the issue? And we kind of walk through some things we see as barriers. And she just gave us these things and empowered us as people to think about those barriers and to chip away at them in our own communities. So one of the things that we talked about there is helping to create not an army, but encouraging voters to create a group of volunteer deputy registrars. So people that can sign people up to vote. So that's one of my goals I'm working on right now is to create some trainings for my audience for that and to help them kind of think about it, not just as this one-off where I sign you up and I'm done, but thinking about these people, kind of how Beto O'Rourke does, where we come back and we text you and say, hey, it's voting time. So we can remind you using apps like Sway. That's one of my goals. If I get 10 people to do that, that's exciting. If I get two, that's exciting. And if the two of us go out there and we get 10 people sign up to vote, then that's exciting to me too. And that same function, one of my goals this year, Houston was second only to Atlanta a couple of years ago when it came to transplants for Black millennials. We were having this influx of Black millennials moving to Houston. They're moving here and they're not signing up to vote here. They're doing absentee votes wherever they're from. So they're still using their parents' address back in Georgia, Florida, Missouri, Chicago, wherever. And we need them to vote in Texas because they live here. They should be voting in Texas. And so I'm working on and thinking about different ways to do events that really target that audience to make it easy for them and encourage them to go ahead and sign up here in Texas to vote in Texas.
That's awesome. That has to take a lot of time.
It does. It does. I can't say I'm always.
Let me just state the obvious, okay?
Can't say I'm always efficient, but so I was working in corporate America, and then I got laid off in February, which sounds like devastating, but I got a severance and I was like, okay, I'm gonna make some things shake. And I remember I'm in my house right now. I was upstairs in my office. I slammed that work computer closed and I ran downstairs and I opened my personal computer and I got to work because I already had things that I was like, I need to respond to all these Black girls who brunch things, but I'm doing my regular job. And so that just opened the door for me to go ahead and do all that stuff like that. So I've been doing this full time until I can find something else. The market's not great, but I have been busy. I don't even know how I could fit it. When I look at the day, I'm like, how could you fit it in a full-time job right now? I don't even know, but you know, I like a steady check. So I'm still not closing out the door, going back into the corporate America or you know, different job like that. But I look at because this is kind of what I do right now. It's 7 days a week. It is, you know, it's 1 a.m. in the morning, Drew. I was up at 1:30 in the morning when the news came out about Lindsey Graham. Ooh. I was up then. And so you're on. You're like, hey. So I was up. So I was up to almost 3:30 after that because it's like an adrenaline shot. Yeah. When a senator that no one was dies suddenly like that, a powerful one like that. And so explaining to people all that. So it's a nonstop thing, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't love it because I do. I really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I mean, this sort of thing, you have to have that sort of passion for this. And Absolutely. I think that's awesome. I can tell that just, you know, just by looking, just by hearing what you're saying, your enthusiasm. I think that's awesome. So, yeah. I want to just ask a question on your take on this. I want to qualify this by saying I love Jasmine Crockett. I hope my wife doesn't find out about this, but I've had a crush on her for some time. So I've been a very big fan of hers, and I hated the fact that I had to pick in this primary, but if you vote, that's just the game. You have to. I want to ask about, because she was recently on a podcast. She was asked about her honest assessment of the Senate race, and she was honest. And my take on this is that she said some things in an honest way, and the rights just took it out of context and is blowing it up and is saying how, well, Democrats have been racist forever. She's just making it clear, or that's just gonna hurt Tallarico because now she just said that all the people who voted for him are just a bunch of racists. Is that how you take it, or do you have another take on that?
It's such a deep question. Yeah. I'll start with this idea that white supremacy and all of these, like an anti-Blackness, these are embedded in our systems. And even if, no matter how you vote, if you're on the left or the right, there's going to be, we can't escape this. How our systems work, how our voting system works, how our districts work. This is embedded in our systems. We know this. When we think about who our founding fathers were and how they built these systems, they did not build this with little Erika in mind, this Black girl, who's a descendant of enslaved people. That they weren't considering me. So we understand this. So I think that sometimes the left feels as though, well, we're not racist. Look at what's happening over there. And as a proud Democrat, and I always push back and say this, I'm always like, what is happening with the Republicans, even in my lifetime, and I just turned 40 last month, is it's a the heightened it's gotten significantly worse. It used to be kind of this kind of whisper thing. It is said overtly from the podiums in the White House, right? So I think that because of that, that has allowed us to not be introspective in how we as the left and how we move and how anti-blackness can still be embedded in the systems and how this party operates. And so I think it's important for us not. I don't want us to think that, oh, we're not like the Republicans. Yeah, we don't have to be that bad to still have some issues you got to work out. So that's the first thing. Republicans are our biggest fans, and they watch everything that we do. While we may not be watching Fox News, while we may have that channel blocked, they watch everything we do. And I remember when Jasmine Crockett was first entering the race, and I was doing some research for something like a video I was going to do, and I looked and I saw that there was a whole Jasmine Crockett beat on Fox News. They were releasing an article about her 2 or 3 a week. And so with that, so they follow her more than they follow most other Democrats. She's one of their top people they follow. And I make that point to say that because they follow her, they are intimately aware about how Black people that follow Crockett, how we're talking about this, and they will find a way to exploit that. And so I think it would be a disservice, and it just wouldn't be smart on our part as Democrats of any race for us to act as though to be dismissive of what they're calling out. We can do two things. We can say we got our faults. We got issues we got to work out over here. We can't be out here saying in encouraging PACs and funding PACs that call a qualified Black woman that say that if she wins, we lose. We can't condone that kind of stuff from our party. We can't condone that. Right. We can say that while also saying, but y'all got some issues over there, and this is what we're fighting against that y'all are doing. So I think there's kind of these two things here, and I feel like a lot of liberals find solace in, well, I'm not a Republican, and they're not trying to be introspective about the issues that are happening on this side of the aisle as well.
Okay, I love that, and you make a great point in the fact that the Democratic Party has come a very long way, and we look at the history of it and the fact that it has evolved and has tried to do all the things it can to it could do better to really confront the past, and you do that by not repeating those things, and so there's a pretty good line of where that actually took place with even though we point to things that may have happened 60 years ago, but the Republicans didn't nominate a Black man to be president. They haven't nominated a Black woman to be president or even vice president, or they haven't even nominated a woman. So those are very small things in the grand scheme of things, but I think those are very, very, very small steps. But what you said is, I think that is absolutely true, and I couldn't agree more with you on that. I recently saw that Talarico's coming to Houston, and for a town hall on Sunday. Is that right? You plan on going to that, correct?
I will be there. I can't say I'll be there with bells on, but I'll be there. I'll be there. Yes, it'll be, and I'll say this: we had a meeting with Black leaders across the state were invited to a meeting with Talarico's team on Sunday, and they were intentional in having this event in the Black community, in a Black neighborhood in Houston, right between like Fort Bend and kind of the South Side neighborhoods in Houston that are majority Black neighborhoods have been for my whole life. So the hope is that Black Houstonians show up to express their concerns, their questions, hear from the candidate, and all those different things. So that's part of why I've been talking about it, because when I know there's an intent for Black people, I always want to make sure that community is centered, and I want people to know, well, I've heard from the campaign directly. This is supposed to be the space for you. Everyone's welcome, but we're trying to center the population that lives in that neighborhood, of course. And so that's part of why I've shared some of it with my audience. Because I want people, if the space is intended for a certain audience or what have you, or I want to make sure that they know that.
That's awesome. Yeah, and yes, please fill it up and let your voice be heard. And hopefully, we all. I've been reading it. I've been reading it from others who've said he's been saying that he is listening. Let's see this finally put into some sort of an action. And I also want to just say this. I mean, it's not Jasmine Crockett's thing for her to help him campaign. He won this thing. This is his deal. He's got to do it. And it's great that she's going to help with bottom of ticket races, because those big areas you hit, you said it right, because we vote for everybody in this state. In a county like Harris County, which is the largest county in our state, there's a lot of things to vote on, and it can be overwhelming for maybe a first time voter. You go, oh my gosh, I'm never doing this again. And so it's good that you have this app of sway, and that you have a figure such as the congresswoman who's going to really fight for people to fill out the ballot. And so I just wanted to just say that I agree with that assessment. This isn't Jasmine Crockett's thing to do here. I mean, she has, it's not her campaign here. Okay, I wanted to also ask about does elected office interest you?
Not at all. Not at all. People ask this all the time. Not at all. And over the last, no. My family was always like, when are you gonna no, and my I didn't tell my sister. My sister's always like, when are you gonna run? And I'm gonna tell her, remember, I got married when I was younger and divorced. I've been divorced, but I'm sorry, remember when when you were sitting there helping me hand emboss all those wedding menus? Can you imagine how much you have to do if I run for office? You don't want me to run for office, trust and believe, because you're gonna have to do a whole bunch of work. And she's gonna say, oh my God. And she's gonna say no. But no, I have no desire to run for office. I think there is so much value in us having people that understand these things, that are able to communicate these issues well in all different spaces, and space like that you're in as a content creator, working for campaigns, consulting with campaigns, all that. I know that we're always so eager to find like exciting people to push into, and I'm saying that, and I'm that's what I won't lie. I have been motivated by those Grand Platinum consultants, because if those clowns can go out there and just start picking people in states they don't live in, I've said, you know what, Erica, you guys start, not me, but I'm gonna have to start nudging people saying you would be good, you would be good. But no, I have no desire. The idea of having to like put yourself out there, I can't respond, I can't be rude to people and snap at people, and I can't. No, I can't. I was at an event. I won't say which campaign. I was at an event recently, and this lady, I don't know why she thought we worked for the campaign, but we're just there as voters like her. And she came up with us and she's trying to complain about something the candidate said that was not accurate. And in my mind, I went to like kind of like the professional kind of thing. And then at one point I said, Erica, you don't work for this campaign. Y'all are just voters. So I was like, ma'am, stop talking to me. So I was like, ma'am, I don't know. Tell the campaign. I can't do that. so yeah. Bad idea.
Oh my gosh. Well, one thing I like to tell my students is that some of the best people who could be in office are the ones who don't actually want to seek it. And so I'm so encouraged by someone who is charismatic as you, and as well spoken, incredibly intelligent. You know what's up. And you're like, I don't want that. I'm going, you'd be a great county judge. You'd be a great city council person.
The way that Houston City Council members just got yelled at for hours today, rightfully so, I would not be able to sit there. Like Alejandra Salinas, who's one of our newest city council members in Houston. I don't know if you've heard about her, but if you have not, look her up, because they're going to push her to run for mayor one day, but she's only been in city council for like 9 months. She was up there and she started crying about just like hearing the stories about how communities are impacted by ICE. And so either you're crying or you're mad or whatever, but and some people will argue like, well, she shouldn't do that. Well, this is real. This is a real thing. So I applaud them. I love interviewing them. I love meeting them. Support the ones I like, but doing it, I just think there's so much power in kind of being this independent new media that can tell the truth about stuff. And then I'm like, okay, well, if I go running for office, I can't approach online how I do now. I can't do that.
Yeah. Well, fair enough. Talk to me about some of your best interviews, because you've talked about how you've talked with some candidates and some other major players. Talk to me about like which ones really like stood out as that was good or that one stunk.
I
Or have you
honestly,
even had that?
I haven't had any that were really bad. And I think it's probably because I only, some people like the idea of like, being this kind of neutral journalist. The
Hmm.
beauty of what I do is I don't have to platform anybody I don't like. And so I have never put anybody on my platform that I would not vote for, ever. Like I've not done that. And typically when they're on my platform at that point in time, they have my vote. There's only
Okay.
been one time I was kind of neutral. I was a neutral for a bit. People don't believe me, but I was. I was neutral for a bit with Crockett and Tallarico and was talking to both of them at the same time
Mhm.
and still kind of figuring out where I was heading with that, right? Um, so probably some of my favorite ones. Christian Menifee is one of my favorites. We and it kind of happened by and I we have several mutual friends, but I never met him. And people were sending him my content. They were like, you should interview with this girl. And I really hadn't done interviews for a member of Congress. He was running for Congress at the time. And so he hops on, and the first question I asked him is like, okay, because he went to law school in Missouri, as did I. And I said, now, how did you end up in Missouri for law school? So that was our first talk. It was kind of this casual conversation. So one thing I do enjoy is bringing people on and making it feel like we're talking, like I'm talking to just anybody, and making them feel humanized and making them feel like more personable in that way. So that was one. Today I interviewed Letitia Gutierrez, and because of what's happening right now, it's so heavy. This is her community, this is her neighborhood that's being impacted by this ICE murder. So it feels heavy, and people may not connect with it in that way. I think people will. But I still love the interview because I feel like what everything I didn't even ask that many questions. I let her talk because it was just it needed to be said. And so I was happy to lend my platform to her. My page is bigger than hers. People still are learning about her. I was happy to lend my platform to her to use. And people say, oh, that's propaganda. Okay, fine. That's what it, those are really good. I haven't had a bad one. I think I've had some really fun ones. Jasmine Crockett joined some live with us before, and just she's always a good kiki. Trying to think who else. Amanda Edwards was also good.
Yeah.
She was in
Yeah.
the middle of a church interviewing.
Oh.
That was fun. I've interviewed Christian Menifee twice, and the second one, I'm so mad I didn't download it from TikTok, and so I don't
Mm,
think I have it anymore. I had a great
okay.
interview with Otis Evergaro, who is running for state house in
Okay.
Houston area. Yeah, they always are good. I usually Jordan Thomas, who ran for city council in Houston, probably one of the people I interview usually win. Well, man, so him and Amanda are the only two I interviewed that didn't win. But I will
Yeah.
say for both of them, but they were just it was great, and I think they always are surprised at how much I know about them when they come in because I'll ask questions. I'll be like, oh, so I saw you worked at da da da. They're like, because my background's investigations, and so I'm gonna go
Sure.
look online. I also don't want to look stupid sitting here and saying, so what do you do? Where are you from? I want to know
Yeah.
some. So that's part of it. So yeah.
I want to ask you about your take on this governor's race, because the Senate and the whole national aspect with the president, all that takes up a lot of energy out of any room, and the ones that often get forgotten in our state, like the governor and even the lieutenant governor's race. I'll get it out in a minute. Those are things that we just ignore. And these are incredibly powerful spots, especially the little gov, if we want to put it like that. Um, they're both those two guys. I don't want to say their names because I don't want to end up in a Google search with them, but they aren't even talking about their opponents. They're spending all their time beating up on Tallarico. They must think that they got this in the bag for them to be doing that. Is that the way that you take it too?
I think so. I've also heard this. This is just like gossip.
Hmm.
Gossip. This is me saying it, not Drew. But I've heard that the belief was that Tallarico was going to run for governor, right?
Hmm.
And I have always, and people always like, he should have been ran for governor. I always said Senate, so I was never mad about the whole Senate thing. So Abbott had spent a lot of time and energy getting negative things about Tallarico, getting information about him. And so he's like, I'm not gonna waste that time and money. So that's what I think is part of it, is that
Okay.
he's like, I spent a lot of time getting Oppo research on him and testing things out with focus groups and all these different things. I'm not wasting it. I don't care if he's not running against me. So I think that's just like, it's just, what's that sunken cost fallacy with Abbott. Um, right now, Gina Hinojosa just needs that spark. She's out here, she's working hard. And I get so mad when people are in the comments saying things like, oh, she's not, I haven't seen her. Well, go look,
Yep.
she's doing all these great things, And so I don't know if you saw, but me and some friends did a really fun TikTok trend with her. It was like the Netflix documentary trend. Did you see
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah.
was so fun. We walked in, and I know she was dead tired. She just finished the town hall, and we walk in there like, hey, we want to do a TikTok trend. She's like, what? Where are my glasses? And we show her the video. She's like, okay, let's do it. Let's do it. So she was a good sport about it. And it's it shows her kind of, more naturally. But I do think so. I think there's sunken cost fallacy for Abbott when it comes to Tallarico. They also
Hmm.
see us at the top of the ticket. I think they also are fearful of us getting another Beto. They hate, Beto is still a rock star and all over the country, but certainly in Texas, he is still a rock. I watch students. I went to U of H to interview him. Oh, that's a good interview I had too with Beto. Beto was great.
Okay.
Um, I watched these students line up to talk to Beto. These kids were kids. They would have been like 10 years old when he was on the ballot in 2018. And they are there excited, like, oh my God. So they think they're gonna prevent that. The Republican Party, I feel like, is very good. The Democrats I think we see this as unethical, but the Republican Party, they start looking to see who do they have next? Who's on that bench? Who's up and coming?
Hmm.
Let's start attacking them now. So they start doing that beforehand. So I think that's how you get Tallarico. I don't think they saw Gina as running for
Yeah.
something. But Abbott is worried about Gina Hinojosa. Let me tell you but he's worrying. We're seeing that from a policy standpoint. For Abbott to go sit in that rural area and do all this stuff about data centers
Yep.
after he was like, rah, 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 go data centers, we know that he's concerned.
Yep.
And so that's part of why I said, I made a video. I said, your governor is lying. Here's a press release where he's talking about data
Hmm.
centers, all excited. Here's him welcoming Elon Musk and all these different entities into Texas. I'm like, no. And so his approach with Gina from a policy standpoint, so she can't get a leg up with him. I don't know, truly no pun intended.
Yeah.
She can't get up on him when it comes to that. I do think he should be worried though, because Gina is going hard against education. And we've seen in places like Harris County, where I live at, Cy-Fair ISD. That's the school I went to school. I went to Cy-Fair ISD schools from kindergarten through high school. I'm a Cy-Fair ISD product. We flipped Cy-Fair ISD. And it didn't just flip with Democrats showing up. It flipped with Republicans saying, y'all doing too much of the school board. And so that's what Gina's. And so I think there's a couple of issues here that Republican, there's like three issues Republicans could cut on with him. Am I eager to think they're going to do it? No. But you've got immigration that I do think there's some people like, okay, y'all doing too much.
Yep.
Killing people in the streets in
Yep.
unmarked cars, I wouldn't pull over either. So you've got that. You've got the school stuff. People are like, our schools this is out of control. Y'all are doing too much. And then you've got the data centers.
Yep.
And if you're losing rural voters on data centers,
Hmm.
we've got an issue here. So
Yeah.
I do think he's concerned about her, but he's approaching it differently and
Hmm.
he's investing money in Harris County, places where she could pick up on some of those issues from ICE. All three of those issues, she could really do some big pickups on those.
Absolutely. And, I agree with everything that you said there. And to even further that just a little bit is that, we're seeing a lot of these, even like big schools, even some mid-sized schools, they're operating at a budget deficit. They are passing budget deficits for the school year. And, these Republican state leaders, and I'm sure, Abbott and Patrick would say the same thing. Well, that's on you. You school boards have done all that. Okay. Well, tell them when their fourth grade teacher doesn't show up because they've been fired or they've been cut because of these budgets. But so I think that is so true. These data centers. I mean, I've seen people get mad, and then I've seen people get really, really, really mad. And I've seen it like on both sides. I'm out here in a West Texas, mainly rural area and all that. So it's interesting to me whenever I see both the left and the right, and even in the middle, are just converging and saying no thanks. And so I think you hit the nail on the head with that. That is something that can definitely be used, and Abbott is scared about that. I mean, Governor Weathervane. I mean, let's just say what it is.
To see him flip on that quickly,
Yeah.
Abbott doesn't flip on stuff like that. Not
No.
that quickly. I mean, he'll flip flop, but not like that. And I was like, when I saw that video of him up there leading a protest, I said,
Mm-hmm.
and I posted a video on that. And sometimes my state videos don't do well, but I say well, they don't go viral.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'm gonna post it anyway because I'm like, if 100 people see it, that's powerful to me. It doesn't mean to get a million views, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
100 people, like that can make a difference.
Yeah.
That video did. I still get likes on that video. That video did really well because people were like, everyone's following data centers, and to see the receipts of where I'm showing you 2 press releases from his office last year, not even like last calendar year, not even a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I just saw him in that. I saw that press conference. Wait, he's not telling the truth. No, he's not. He's lying to
No,
us.
every bit of it.
Mhm.
And I just one other thing, and then I'll ask you one final question. You make a good point about how he being Abbott will focus group a lot of things. He tries to be very politically polished and all that. I don't know about you, but I'm finding all these attacks on Tallarico just to be weird. Like just the most odd thing I've ever heard. Like he can't lift a 90 pound weight, or he follows women on Instagram, and you're just like, if I'm an average dude who's like some hairy dude in the Panhandle, and I hear of a candidate who's following women on Instagram, oh, well, I like that guy. I mean, or what do you mean he can't? What's that have to do with any of that? It's see to me that's like I don't want to I don't want to defend Ken Paxton and all the other terrible things by all the stuff, all the baggage that he is. So let me just attack Tallarico. Is that the way you see it, or do you see another angle?
I think it's really interesting. So, Ken, they know Ken's a problem. They were wrong I mean, and if we're being honest here, and I've said this before, John Cornyn Tallarico matchup is really interesting, particularly when we talk about Black voters. And
Mhm.
they mentioned this. I was like, y'all know that John Cornyn has some bona fides with Black voters. He was the sponsor for the Juneteenth bill, right? But y'all didn't want to go there. Y'all wanted to go with Ken Paxton, the man that
Mhm.
released an anti-DEI press release on MLK Day, a holiday. That's who y'all want to go with, right? So you're right. They're avoiding him. And any other day, when we look at Ken Paxton's resume, put aside the crimes and all the other stuff like that, just attorney general, statewide elected, all these different things, that's a making of a good senator, typically. But they can't even rest on that because he abuses the office. He's been impeached. He's got all these different issues. So you're right. They really can't lean into whatever positive that you want to talk about for Ken Paxton from their standpoint because they know he was impeached by his own party. He's like, we're gonna just dig at that. So I feel like they're trying to figure out what they want to approach with Tallarico, and I don't know. It all feels kind of silly to me from the standpoint. For me, I prefer to see us getting some policy stuff too, but again, they don't want to go there because Kim Paxton. So yeah, but I also feel like to your point, there's some contradictory things here, right? They want to question, play into the whole manosphere, Charlie Kirk kind of stuff, and question his masculinity, right? While also trying to claim that he's like this philanderer or whatever. Those things are kind of in conflict, so that you can see that they're kind of testing things out there, throwing things at the wall to see what's going to fit. And some of it's silly, but then it also kind of gets in some earned media that helps with his name recognition in some spaces. So I guess he doesn't really care. So like now you see him eating a dinosaur rib at somewhere in a photo because they kept saying he was a vegan. So then
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
okay, that didn't work. So what you got next kind of thing.
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
think they have anything figured out just yet. To me, I let it go head to head on policy when it comes to these kind of things like that. So I would love to see like them up here trying to attack him for saying that Lorenzo Salgado Arujo was, Houstonian that didn't deserve that. Like let's argue about that because you're gonna lose there too. But let's argue about that. But I'm with you. It is weird. I try to avoid. I don't like to get on that side of the internet.
Right.
If we're being honest. But yeah, it is. It's. I don't know. The strategy right now feels like whatever can stick. But they the manosphere of the hypermasculinity, we know that has been that was Charlie Kirk's whole brand, and he was really getting the younger generation to sign on to that, the Gen Z folks, and so I feel like they're playing on that as well. So we'll see how that kind of plays out. I don't. It's kind of whack to me, but I'm
Yeah.
with you. It's whack.
It's just I'm scratching my head and just trying to find what sticks. I think that's yeah. Um, Erika, I can't thank you enough for being on this show. And um, tell people where they can find you. Everyone's go subscribe to her podcast and all of her platforms. Where can they find you? Go ahead and list everything, please.
So I'm Black Girls Who Brunch on Threads, TikTok, and Instagram and Facebook, and also YouTube, which is crazy. I used to really only use one platform. I've kind of expanded to different platforms. And so if you are like, I don't have TikTok, well, I'm posting the same videos on Instagram and also on Facebook. So you can see the same videos there. I'm on all those platforms. I go on Twitter occasionally. My page there is like Black Girl Brunch. It's a little bit shorter, but I don't want to be over there too much. So don't look for me over there. I go on there. I just keep it so I can see what's going on. Like, cause it's like sitting in a room on fire over there. So that's where I am for the most part. I do have a Substack that I post on occasionally. You can also find me on sway.co/Black Girls Who Brunch because I'll do the updates on that through that app. But yeah, I'm pretty much everywhere. Any social media platform that you can think of other than like Blue Sky, I'm on there as Black Girls Who Brunch.
Okay, awesome. Go throw her a follow. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. I
It
really appreciate your
was.
time.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Thank you. Folks, that's it from me today. A special thank you to Erika Harrison for being on the show. It was such a good interview. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did conducting it. Thank you also for watching and or listening to the Outsider podcast. And folks, look, if you or someone you know would like to be a guest on the show, shoot me an email at the.outsider806@gmail.com. You can see it here. And I say that I'll talk to anyone, and by and large, that is true. I mean, but let's understand. I'm giving you political thoughts here. I'm giving you political analysis here. We're having some political fun here. So I kind of want to keep it in that particular realm. I've gotten some emails about some people who want to talk to me about things like health and other things. I'm not here to say that that's not important. It is, but I want you to know that this is more of a political thing than it is really anything else. So if you agree with me and you want to be on the program, awesome. If you disagree with me and you want to be on the program, you want to have a conversation, let's do it. I have no problem with that. And the more entertaining it is with people who we can have a nice back and forth with. But that aside, again, that email is the.outsider806@gmail.com. All right. Thank you so much for watching and listening. I really appreciate your attention. And folks, I will see you again very, very soon.
The preceding analyses and opinions were that of Drew Landry and his alone. They did not necessarily reflect all of his podcast listeners or newsletter readers. Thank you for listening to the Outsider podcast. Be sure to follow the Outsider on X and on Facebook. Also, don't forget to sign up to be a free subscriber to his newsletter on Substack. Just look for the Outsider. We will see you again next time.